Hello, my name is Laura Lee Rose, author of the Book of Answers, 105 Career Critical Situations, and Timepiece, Making Peace with Time. I am a business and efficiency coach that focuses on professional development, career management, time management, and work-life balance strategies. Earlier this month, a project leader reached out to me and asked if I could provide a foolproof technique for estimating. He had read my article on the best way to win a professional argument and thought I would be a good guest speaker. Unfortunately, travel costs prohibited an on-site presentation, and management did not approve of a virtual version. So I decided to record this presentation for your team in hopes that you discover something that you can use in your individual scheduling methods. Before we start, I want to give you a little more about my background. I grew up in the IT and software industry. I rose from the ranks from programmer and developer through development manager. I started a client advocacy program called the Design Partner Program within my own department. This Design Partner Program was soon adopted throughout the IBM organization and became part of their biannual user conference. Although I left IBM in 2009, my Design Partner Program is still going strong. I also hold several design patents, have authored several papers, published books, and spoke at several technical conferences. I only mention these things to illustrate how far you can go. Today, I want to limit our discussion to two general topics. Number one, how to generate a ballpark estimate, and two, how to manage the estimate as you go along. It's always nice to feel confident in your estimates, but oftentimes this is very difficult and may even be unrealistic. The reason I say this is because estimates are often asked before the projects even start. That means you don't really know all the issues that you may encounter. If you are working with leading-edge technology or innovative solutions, this may be the first time you've tried this. The requirements may change, or your staff resources are reduced or redirected, or you may later be asked to multitask between multiple projects. Because of the above, it's best to be comfortable with your best estimate at that time and work on progressive refinement of that estimate as you go along. This means that you need to focus on managing your estimates as you go along. View your estimates as a living asset versus a once-and-done task. One of the fundamental themes you will hear today is transparency. This doesn't mean to tell everyone about everything. Just make sure you are clear and transparent on things that matter. This means anything that would impact delivery, quality, resources, cost, and timing. A good place to start is at the beginning. To create a best ballpark estimate, prepare yourself with as much information on the project as possible. This means doing your homework. Understand the problem you are trying to solve and then the solution. Make sure you understand the customer's perspective. By this, I mean understand what problem or issue the client is trying to solve. Oftentimes, it's not sufficient to merely focus on the solution or feature requested. You really need to understand the problem the client is trying to solve. Here's a real-world example. A client was insistent on having a drag-and-drop feature in our project management tool in the next revision, which was 2 weeks away. Our developers were resistant because they were using an external library set of routines, which did not accommodate drag and drop. Rewriting and replacing those routines was very risky because that change would have a system-wide effect. It would take more than 2 weeks to make the necessary changes and retest the entire system. Both sides were adamant about the position and everyone was on edge. So I asked the client specifically, what problem were they trying to solve with the drag and drop feature? They expertly explained that they wanted to create a new project plan from existing plans. They wanted to open an old project plan, highlight the folders and files from that old project, and then just drag and drop to create a new project plan. Once I understood the why, I was able to delight them because we already had an import function that allowed them to do just that. It just did not accomplish it with the drag and drop feature. Instead, the import feature provided a directory structure in which you could drill down by double-clicking, and then you can select not only the files and folders, but you could even drill down further into the code, which you could include or exclude into the new project plan. The import feature was even more powerful than the client-devised drag-and-drop solution. They were not only amazed at the flexibility and capability of our solution, they were delighted that they already had that feature in their current version. So make sure you don't jump the gun by coding a solution before you really understand the reason behind that specific request. Then go ahead and continue your regular steps of visualizing all the steps, requirements, skills, and resources needed, and your level of effort in days. A quick note to remember, the level of effort is not the same as the date you can deliver. You need to include your real-life calendar of events. For instance, if your level of effort is 8 hours, this is not one working day. You typically have less than 6 hours of working time in an 8-hour day. You have staff and team meetings, lunchtime, breaks, collaborating with others, dependency delays, and the list goes on. I recommend that you take the time to diagram these tasks and dependencies so that you can easily identify any bottlenecks. This is where the critical path analysis or identification tool can help. This is a really important tool in the planning and estimation process. This is where you identify the sequence of tasks and dependencies, their level of effort, and their owners. I normally color code the owners of each task so that I can easily see any resource overloads and bottlenecks. In this example, the orange employee is possibly overloaded and is definitely in the critical path, meaning if he is delayed, the entire project is stopped. If you didn't take the time to diagram this, you may not have been alerted to the possible risk. Also, this is a nice visual tool. Anytime you have 3 or more lines coming into or out of a specific task, you have a bottleneck. If you plot it out this way, you can see the bottlenecks and overloads before the clock starts on the design and development. At this stage, before your estimates are published and coding has started, you can rearrange the assignments to detangle and optimize. The easiest way to come up with a quick ballpark estimate is to interpolate from your historical data. If you haven't kept track of your past coding or test times, you need to start doing this now. The best way to get an accurate estimate or level of effort is to know how long it took you the last time. And the easiest way to do this is to simply time yourself. You may have to divide into categories. For instance, a unit test takes different timing than an integration, a system test, or a user story. So log how long it takes you to do one of each. Or it may be easier to count how many you can complete in 10 minutes. It is not important how you do it. It's simply important that you track it for future reference. Just a reminder, we are still in the analysis and planning stage. We are just using this data for our level of effort and estimate numbers. Each sprint should have a well-defined scope or feature list. You should also have a good understanding of the minimum requirements or acceptance level for each feature. You want to fully understand the minimum requirements for this particular focus. Understanding the very minimum acceptance or deliverable helps when managing the changing estimates. Outlining very clear expectations with the client is imperative. you probably already say, these are the few requirements that we are absolutely delivering in 3 weeks, and we will work hard to include as many of your wants as we can deliver. Then, if possible, you may even be able to over-delight with 1 or 2 nice-to-haves. At the very least, you will now have a list that will help you scope down if issues arise. Another tool is the recovery protocol. Having a recovery protocol understood up front is another great tool. A recovery protocol is simply an agreed understanding of what your team plans to do if you are falling behind. You set your recovery priorities up front. For instance, are you going to reduce the scope first, which is why you want to understand the minimum acceptance level? Or maybe the first thing you want to do is to add more resources, but that adds to the administration time and challenges. Whatever you decide, I recommend you decide up front. Then when something happens, you know exactly how your team will respond immediately. This saves time in the critical moments. Okay, so you now have the customer requirements and the minimum requirements. You know how long it takes you to do certain activities because you have previously timed and logged those activities. We will use a test case example throughout. Now visualize and make a general list of all the areas that you need to write test cases for. Prioritize the list starting from the minimum requirements. Start thinking now about the priority and order of these test cases you plan to create and execute. Once again, this is still the planning stage. So now you have a list of possible test cases, prioritized starting with the minimum requirements. I also went to the additional step to identify which test cases are must run every time, and which test cases are nice to run or run every other time. Anyway, you have a count of your possible test cases, and you know how long each test case will take to design and execute. So, if you know how long you have for the test cases, the creation and the execution, you have a good idea of what you can realistically deliver and deploy in that time period. What makes this step a little easier is to use a rule of thumb or template like this. If you don't already have your own proven template, start off with this one and tweak it as you track time and log your actual results. Another way to look at this is with a quick Gantt chart. Once again, this is to assist in estimating. It's not necessarily how you're going to execute the plan. It's just a layout to illustrate when you can logically start certain activities. Understanding when you can logically start gives you a better idea of how many days you actually have for an activity. Now that you have a better idea of how many days you have to work on a certain task and how long it typically takes to accomplish that task, you can go back to your requirement list. Remember, you have a preliminary idea of how many tests you need and how long it will take to run and create. You don't know how many defects you need to investigate or the number of validation retest cycles you need, but you are closer to a defendable estimate. You have a starting number of hours it will take, and you know your current work schedule, including vacation days, personal times, meeting time, and ongoing project commitments. You can now verify if these additional project hours fit into your current work hours and calendar. Remember, you need to block out your meeting times, your vacation time, your personal time, and your collaboration with coworkers to see if the level of effort actually fit. If the hours do not fit in your current calendar, then you have a low confidence of success. So this is where I recommend introducing your confidence level into your planning and daily meetings. At the start of a project, there are still lots of unknowns. Even if you do your best to estimate how many tests and how long it will take you to execute them, you are assuming that the code is delivered to you on time. You are assuming that you won't find additional paths that you need to test, and you are assuming that the feature list doesn't change. So, in your meetings, discuss your confidence level. Here's an example. When your team leaders and executives ask you for your estimates, and if you agree with the project delivery schedule, you can say, I have a 40% confidence level because I am still waiting on Lexington to deliver. In the past, they have been 3 to 5 days late, and then their delivery code rarely passes our agreed upon acceptance tests. If they can deliver their piece by Wednesday and it passes the acceptance tests, my confidence in the schedule would be 80%. Since the team has their recovery protocol in place, the team can discuss some possible contingency plans. This leads me to the importance of acceptance tests. If you don't already do this, I recommend identifying a handful of appropriate code reviews, test cases, and user stories as your acceptance tests. These will be run at various handoffs between your release builds, your developers, the testers, and contractors. Acceptance tests are a great way to get early results before you actually enter the system level or SQA test phase. Once you are in your execution phase, continue to track and log your actual design and execution times against your estimates. Update your estimates as you go along and keep the team updated. Refer to your recovery protocol, whether you need to ask for assistance, add resources, or reduce the scope of the feature that you are working on. Even if you have a must-have feature, there may be ways to reduce the scope of that feature into a lighter version, with the understanding that the rest of the feature will be released in the next cycle. This would normally be the time where I would do an open Q&A. If you would like to chat or have questions, please feel free to send me an email at laura@lauraleerose.com. Here are some various ways to contact me for more information. Laura@lauraleerose.com or my LinkedIn or Twitter account.